Hello, my name is Shelley Grafstein, and I'm a life coach. And I want to welcome you to this incredible event, From Darkness to Light. I think what I do is really to bring ourselves, mothers of kids who've chosen a different path, from darkness to light. And for those of you who heard the news recently or have been suffering through it for years, there is light. And you know where we find that light? Inside our heads. Everything stems from our thoughts. Now, I'm going to go through some scenarios, give you some tools to use, tricks to use, and I really want to make your relationship with your kids as awesome as mine is with my kids. And it's funny, when I was approached to speak here today, I had 2 out of my 5 kids who had chosen a different path. And just a couple of weeks ago, another one of my children told me that she was no longer religious. So now I have majority of my kids who are no longer Shomer Mitzvot, but they're amazing kids and I love them. And you know what? It didn't change our relationship one iota. So I really practice what I preach, and our lives really have been transformed, totally transformed. So I'm not going to speak a lot about myself, but I will speak about my kids who are no longer religious, some issues we had. But I want to start off with a story that I just read that my friend Baruch Schechter just posted on Facebook, and it was so good. He was in a supermarket with his friend from America from when they were teenagers. And this woman came up to this friend of his and said, "Do you know that your son is a pothead? Aren't you ashamed?" And the mother looked at this other woman in the eyes and she said, "That is my pothead, and I have no reason to be ashamed. And I love him totally." And that's how I want all of us to get to that level. I thought that was so powerful. So what I first want you to do is to validate your emotions. It's no good pushing them inside of ourselves because they just fester, or eating over them, which is what a lot of women do. We eat over our emotions. So I find this really helpful. I call it a brain dump. I take a piece of paper and I write out all the emotions, all the feelings, all the thoughts. Like, my kids should be religious. Was Baal Tshuva. I did everything for them. They should have followed in my paths. It's the best way to live. Here we are living in the Holy Land and they aren't religious. How could they make these choices? What did I do wrong? What did my ex-husband do wrong? I'm embarrassed. I feel guilty. Write everything out. And then we can start looking at them. I'm not going to look at your list with you, but look at the thoughts and see, do these empower me? Do they make any difference how I feel about my relationship with my son? What is the most important? That he be religious and resent me, or that we have a loving relationship and he can become a frum Jew by choice? Okay, that's my goal. I want my kids to have a great relationship and I want them to choose to be religious. When I was 25, I was married to a non-Jew. I knew literally nothing about Judaism, even though I was a Reformed Jew. And I was a bra-burning feminist. And here I am, covering my hair, living in the Holy Land with 5 children. I knew so little that my father supported Orthodox institutions, and there was this big Rav in our house. And my father said, "Do not shake his hand." And I went up to him and I said, "I'm so sorry that you hurt your hand. I hope you feel better." The rabbi looked at me like I had just come from Mars. But when I was 25, I would have hated this future version of myself. It was so non-congruent with who I was. But I had to make the journey myself. And I'm so happy I made the journey. We can't stop our kids from making the journey, okay? They have to discover Judaism for themselves. And there's probably parts of Judaism that they love, and there's parts that they hate. And we have to let them choose what they love, because if we push everything away, they'll probably never come back. Okay, so the story isn't over. We're just at the very, very beginning. Also, a lot of kids, they stay from when they're in their home. And then when they get married, they go off and they alienate a spouse, children. We want them to rebel. And I think it's in Psalm 25 David Hamelech talks about the rebellions of the youth. It's typical. I mean, if David Hamelech is talking about rebellions of the youth, that's part of growing up, trying different identities, what works, what fits with them. And they can try on, just like we go through different styles of clothes, they're going to try on many different hats to see what fits. Okay, so what can we do about our children choosing another path? And you notice I didn't say going off the derech, because going off the derech implies there's only one way to serve God. And I don't believe that at all. Even when we crossed the Yam Suf, there was 12 paths for the 12 tribes. We say Lebanon Sayam Mizmor David, the orchestra of Hashem. An orchestra isn't made of just violins or just pianos. It's made of tens of instruments, because we each have our own tune to play inside. Okay, we have to realize that. And plus the derech has gotten, even since I've been religious in 30 years, the derech has gotten narrower and narrower and narrower, where it used to be this big. As the world becomes crazier, the derech is now this big. So what can we do? First, we have to put our egos and our dreams aside and focus on, what do we want? If you don't want a relationship with your kid, then this is not for you, okay? My whole hashkafa is having a phenomenal relationship with your child and leaving the door wide open. So one of the most important things we can do is listen. Listen to your kid. Ask them lots of questions, not prying questions, but just get to know your kid. What sports do you like? What foods do you like? What music do you like? Animals. And then find out where they're holding and do it with them. My kids love to listen to music. The way I started building bridges with my sons was to listen to music. I have the worst voice in the world. And we would sing. We would laugh at each other. They would laugh at me. I would laugh at me. But it was such an icebreaker. And then the walls started tumbling down. And now I have all 4 of my kids living with me. My oldest is married and she's in Yerushalayim, but I have my other 4 kids living with me and we get along amazing. It's really a gift min hashemayim, okay? We listen to our kids, we listen to what they're saying and listen to what they're not saying, and don't pry, okay? One thing I did with my son, as I thought I was being so clever, one of my sons is a heavy smoker, and I would send him WhatsApps, pictures of lungs, black and smushed and hard, and cancer warnings, and videos of doctors saying not to smoke. And my son said when I would send them in these videos, all I did was encourage him to go outside and smoke even more. So don't send your kid videos about becoming more religious or the dangers of drunk driving or drinking. They know it all, okay? What you can do if they drink and drive is take away their keys if they're driving your car. But again, I would do it with love, from a place of love, not I know better, okay? Kids need to know that they are unconditionally loved. And one of my sons and I were talking about it. And my son was saying the kids who rebel and keep rebelling are the ones whose parents have shut them out, who feel that they're being judged all the time. And my son said, the kids just want to know they're loved. And before I worked into this niche, I was working with women who need to lose weight in their minds. And I would say probably 90% of the women said to me, I just needed validation from my mom that she accepted me the way I am. So I started doing a bracha on Friday night. I would bench my kids, and then I would say, I love you just the way you are. And it was so powerful because I also wanted my mother to say, I love you just the way you are. And when I forget to say it, which unfortunately I do sometimes, my kids always call me out on that. And they said it makes them feel so good. So it's something you can all start right away, is love them just the way they are, because that's how Hashem created them. Okay. Also, not short of this, but it is kind of, so we have to love ourselves. Do we love ourselves unconditionally? When I do EFT with my clients, one of my phrases is, I love myself fully and unconditionally. And a lot of the women cry. They say, I don't love myself fully and unconditionally. And that's something to work on, because if we don't love ourselves fully and unconditionally, it's impossible to love someone else, warts and all. So start working on your self-love. It will be a huge paradigm shift for you. Also, don't say anything that you're going to regret. Okay. Sometimes they push our buttons. Just listen and don't react. And you can write down all the terrible things you would like to say to defend your side of the argument, to prove that you are right and they are wrong, which of course never brings shalom bias. Put that piece of paper under your pillow, and in the morning, read the list. And if it's still relevant, think of ways to say it softer. Okay. And we never call somebody baklali, you are awful, you are terrible, you are whatever. We can say, I have an issue. It makes me. Remember, we learned this in psychology in university, the I framing. I feel, it makes me feel. Okay. As opposed to condemning them. One of my friends who I was coaching, she had a terrible relationship with her son for 10 years. Okay. They couldn't even WhatsApp each other without it turning into a war. And I was working with her and I said, do you really want a relationship with your son? And she went through a million excuses. I'm too busy. Do I have the patience? I don't. He's such a pain. I really don't. I'm happy to cut him out of my life. And anyways, fast forward, we arranged a meeting where the three of us, her son, me, and my client would speak on Zoom. And it was beyond my all of our wildest expectations. It worked out so well that my friend is actually flying across the world to see her son face to face for the first time in a long, long time. And she was crying and she said, oh my God, I had fooled myself that I didn't want a relationship with my son, but it's the most important thing. I felt like half a person. Something for you to think about. I know it doesn't apply across the board, but something, do you really want a relationship? And that has to be the frame of everything. I want a relationship with my son, and everything I do is going to be towards building a relationship. No lashon hora. Sometimes we speak to other children about our children who are off. Our kids have a sixth sense. They know when they're talking about us, and they hate it, and they will resent you. Don't talk about it. Just stop the conversation. Let your kid and maybe you have a child who's experiencing a myriad of emotions that their sibling isn't from, let them speak to you privately out of the house and let them air their emotions, because again, it's all about validating our emotions, but don't talk lashon hora about them, and no lashon hora should come from you. We should know by now, if we're parents, we can never control what others do. I don't know about you guys. Do your kids do homework all the time? Do they clean their room all the time? How often? I'll use a cleaning the room because one of my kids never cleans their room. How often have you nagged them? Clean your room, clean your room, clean your room. Does it work? No. We can never change anybody else's behavior, like really change their behavior, by nagging at them. How do we change people's behavior? If we're lucky, we change people's behavior by how we show up. This is a lot of inner work. How do we want our children to show up? Do we want respect from them? We have to give them respect to them, and to respect ourselves. Okay? Do we want them to be honest? Then don't put them into holes. Like, are you wearing that out of the house? And then what will happen is they'll pack it in their bag, and they will change when they get on the bus or when they get into town. We want them to be as honest with us as we are with ourselves and as we are with others. Don't tell them that you never told a lie. And then when the tzedakah collector is at the door, you scream to your kid, tell them I'm not home. What message are they getting? That it's okay to lie when you want to protect yourself. And that's what they're doing. They're really protecting themselves. If you don't want lying, be honest. Be honest with yourself. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. Okay. Also, what other people do and say, it's not our business, even our kids' business. They have their life. Do we have the perfect life? Can you honestly look at your life and say, I'm finished with making mistakes. I'm perfect. I have worked on every aspect. I look after my body. I look after my health. I look after my lashon hara. I look after my tzedakah. I look after my tefillah. I am perfect in every way. I don't think there's anybody alive, certainly not in our Chumash. Is there anybody who reaches that level that they are perfect in every area? Work on yourself. Take all that energy that you would like your child to be perfect, and you perfect yourself. And I'm telling you, by working on yourself, the energy that you emit, that changes how you appear, will have a ripple effect. My mother used to always say, when you throw a pebble into a pond, watch the ripples. They just radiate outwards. And that's when we do a good deed. And working on ourselves is a fantastic good deed, right? Let's see. Oh, we can also love character traits that exist in our kids without loving the outcome. I'm sure I've told you this story, but my son, when he was 13, had a pipe dream that he wanted to buy a motorcycle. And I played along with it thinking, okay, how many of us have dreams that never materialize? But he got a job in the summer when he was 13 in construction, back-breaking labor. He was schlepping 50-kilo bags of cement concrete cement, powdered cement, whatever it's called, when he was only 45 kilos. And he worked. Most of the students this Kablan had hired quit. He worked the whole summer. He worked another summer. He worked another summer. He worked at a restaurant. He was saving all this money for his motorcycle. And when he was 16, he bought his first motorcycle. And I have to admit, I was very upset. But I was able to work on myself to the stage that I could say, oh my God, you worked so hard. You had a dream. And in 4 years, you were able to materialize that dream. How many of us have a dream that we've just stuffed inside of us? So I was able to say you had tenacity, you had endurance, you never let go of your goal, and you realized it. Those are all unbelievable qualities. So we talk about those qualities all the time. So don't focus on the end result. If it doesn't sit well with you, you can't lie to your subconscious, and your kid will know if you're lying. That if you say, I'm so excited you smoke, or I'm so excited you got a motorcycle, but we can appreciate the process. Okay. Look for the good in it. And we have to leave the door wide open. They want to come for Shabbos. Amazing. They want to come for Shabbos and they don't want to wash. Amazing. We're not here to judge. God, that's God's job. Okay. We just want them to be with us as much as they can and to have a good time. They like cholent, they like kishka, they like brisket. Have it if you can afford it. Make it as pleasant as you can. And talk about topics that they're interested in. If they get bored through a Devar Torah, then make the Devar Torah very relevant to life now. Okay, there's so many fantastic Divrei Torah. It doesn't even have to be a Divrei Torah directly from the Torah. It can be a Musar Shir. It can be something topical that you put a Torah slant on it. There's so many ways to bring Torah into our life without hammering people over the head of it. Sorry. So I spoke fast. I gave you lots of information. And I'm just going to quickly summarize, even though I don't have a summary sheet in front of me, but feel your emotions. Okay. It's very important to validate our emotions. Do a brain dump, write them all out. Which ones are serving you? If they're not serving you, don't put them back in you. As soon as you start feeling that emotion, we have the power to say, that is just disabling me. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel in love. I want to feel hopeful. And that emotion doesn't doing it. So let's choose another emotion to focus on. And God actually gave us that power to do that. What is our goal? To make our kid from or to have a relationship with our child and let them choose the life they want and leaving the door open for them to choose. Not to judge the person, not to judge the action, not to talk lashon hara. And if we want to make changes, this is where it begins. Work on perfecting yourself. So I think those are all the key areas. I probably forgot some, but be that proud mother. Your kid doesn't have to be a pothead, but if someone comes up to you and says, do you know your child is smoking on Shabbat? You can say, I love my child and I am so proud of who he is. Okay. We don't have to buy into their problems. Their meaning the person who talks to you, how they think of your child, how they think of you, how they think of their housekeeping. That's not your business. That's their business. So be strong, be committed. Hashem gave us all gifts to use. And the most powerful gift I find is being able to change our thoughts to empower us. And I think one of the most empowering things as moms is to have a phenomenal relationship with your kid. So change this darkness that you're holding inside and turn it into light. It's their journey. It's their life. Embrace them, love them, bench them this Shabbat with, I love you just the way you are. And while you're at it, bench yourself. Okay, sending you love. And if you want to contact me, if you have questions, my contact information will be listed below. Have a super, super day and enjoy the rest of the conference.